When the fighting stopped in Europe in May 1945, the war did not truly end for Germany. It changed form. The guns fell silent, but peace did not arrive. The country slid into a vacuum where authority dissolved, systems failed, and hunger spread. What remained was a society fractured at every level, forced to endure without a state, without stability, and without any clear sense of what might come next. For millions of civilians, the fall of the Third Reich was not liberation. It marked the beginning of a far more uncertain struggle. Germany in 1945 was no longer a functioning nation. Surrender brought no order, it brought exposure. Years of total war had hollowed the country from within. Allied bombing had destroyed or severely damaged nearly 1/5 of all buildings nationwide. In major cities, the devastation was far greater. Berlin, Hamburg, Cologne, Dresden, Essen, Frankfurt. Entire urban centers were reduced to seas of rubble. Streets vanished beneath debris. Landmarks survived only as scorched shells. An estimated 3.6 million homes lay in ruins. Hundreds of thousands of civilians had been killed in air raids. Millions more were wounded or left without shelter. What infrastructure remained was shattered and unreliable. Rail lines lay twisted and unusable. Bridges had collapsed. Power stations were wrecked. Water systems failed. Hospitals and schools were damaged or destroyed. In many cities, nothing functioned as a whole. Germany's male population had been decimated. More than 5 million soldiers were dead. In some age groups, 1/4 to 1/3 of all men had been killed. Those who returned were often wounded, traumatized, or chronically ill. The population that remained was largely female, elderly, or young, living amid ruins that offered little protection from hunger, disease, or the coming winters. As Allied forces advanced and the Red Army entered Berlin, Nazi authority disintegrated with startling speed. Orders were still issued, but no machinery existed to enforce them. Local officials fled or disappeared. Police forces collapsed. Courts ceased to operate. Records were destroyed. Uniforms were abandoned in streets and fields. For ordinary people, the state simply vanished. Survival replaced obedience as the central concern. Civilians emerged from cellars and bunkers to find their neighborhoods erased. Entire streets no longer existed. Familiar paths led nowhere. Many burned documents, party records, uniforms, and photographs, anything that linked them to the fallen regime. Others waited in place, uncertain which actions might prove dangerous under the new occupiers. Hunger soon became the defining experience of 1945 and 1946. Food production had collapsed. Fields were abandoned, mined, or destroyed. Transport networks that once moved grain and livestock no longer worked. Urban food supplies depended on ration systems that could not meet even minimal needs. Daily rations often dropped below subsistence levels. Malnutrition spread rapidly, especially among children and the elderly. Money lost its value. Cigarettes became currency. Barter replaced wages. Watches, furniture, clothing, and wedding rings were traded for food. People stripped bombed buildings for anything reusable: wood, metal, bricks, insulation. In extreme cases, civilians boiled wallpaper paste, chewed paper, or consumed non-nutritive substances simply to blunt hunger pains. The winter of 1946 to 1947, one of the coldest of the century, pushed many to the brink of starvation. Clearing Germany's ruined cities became a human effort. Heavy machinery was scarce, fuel was unavailable. Trucks and cranes had been destroyed or seized. The burden of removing rubble fell largely to women, teenagers, and elderly men. They formed long chains, passing bricks from hand to hand. Rubble was sorted piece by piece. Salvageable materials were set aside. Broken bricks were cleaned for reuse in future construction. These women became known as the Trümmerfrauen, the rubble women. At the time, they were not symbols. They were laborers under compulsion, often ordered to work long hours in exchange for minimal food. The work was exhausting, dangerous, and relentless. Only later would they be remembered as icons of reconstruction. At the same time, Germany faced a public health crisis. Tuberculosis, typhus, and diseases linked to malnutrition spread quickly. Overcrowded shelters, destroyed housing, and limited medical care worsened conditions. Hospitals operated with severe shortages of staff, medicine, and equipment. Psychological collapse was widespread. Years of propaganda, fear, bombing, and loss had drained the population emotionally. Many people withdrew inward. Ideology faded. Survival replaced belief. The future felt distant and undefined.
Germany no longer existed as a sovereign state. It became an occupied territory, divided among the victors. The country was split into Allied zones, each governed separately. In the east, the Soviet Union controlled the eastern part of Germany, including cities such as East Berlin, Dresden, and Leipzig. In the south, the United States administered the American zone, with major cities including Munich, Frankfurt, and Stuttgart. In the northwest, Britain controlled its zone, including Hamburg and the Ruhr industrial region, with cities such as Essen. In the southwest, France administered its zone, with centers including Mainz and Freiburg. Berlin, though located deep within the Soviet zone, was itself divided into 4 sectors under joint Allied control. From the outset, daily life depended heavily on geography. Food access, security, legal protection, and economic opportunity varied sharply by zone. One factor slowed recovery across all areas: the removal of German industrial capacity. As part of post-war reparations, Allied powers dismantled and removed large amounts of German machinery. Entire factories were stripped. Equipment was shipped abroad. This process was most extensive in the Soviet zone, but it also occurred in British and French areas. The loss of machinery delayed economic recovery and deepened shortages. It reflected Allied priorities in the immediate post-war period, where punishment, prevention, and control took precedence over rebuilding. Denazification followed a similarly uneven path. Early purges were broad, but practical needs soon intervened. Administrators, engineers, teachers, and specialists were required to keep society functioning. Many former Nazis returned quietly to civilian roles. Justice remained partial and inconsistent. Alongside this, a parallel economy emerged. Black markets became essential. Rural to urban barter trips became common. Authorities frequently tolerated illegal trade because enforcement was impossible and alternatives did not exist. The collapse of authority unleashed widespread violence. Sexual violence against women occurred across occupied Germany, most extensively in areas reached by the Red Army during the initial advance. Estimates vary widely, but the scale was vast. Some Allied commands attempted discipline and enforcement. Others tolerated abuse. Many crimes were never punished. Fear shaped civilian behavior. In some regions, families hoped American or British forces would arrive first. The trauma endured long after the violence ended. At the same time,
Germany became the center of the largest population movement in European history. Millions of ethnic Germans were expelled from territories east of the Oder-Neisse line, regions that had been German before the war. Families arrived in shattered cities with nothing but what they could carry. They were often unwelcome, seen as competitors for scarce food and housing. Millions of German soldiers remained in captivity. Those held by Western allies were generally released within a few years. Those held by the Soviet Union often remained far longer, many until the late 1940s, some into the 1950s. Hunger, forced labor, and disease were widespread. Many never returned. Germany's population was permanently altered. Between 1945 and 1949, Germany entered a period of silence. Survival left little room for reflection. Guilt, trauma, shame, and loss were rarely spoken aloud. Families avoided discussion of what they had endured or supported. Schools sidestepped recent history. Public memory remained fractured. Contrary to later belief, recovery did not begin immediately. The Marshall Plan was announced in 1947 and implemented in 1948, after Germany's worst years had already passed. It coincided with currency reform and the return of functioning markets. Its impact was psychological as much as economic. For the first time since collapse, many Germans believed a future might exist. Reconstruction accelerated, especially in the Western zones. The Soviet zone followed a different course. Germany divided. Trials punished only a fraction of those responsible for Nazi crimes. Many others reintegrated quietly. A full reckoning with the Holocaust and the regime's broader crimes would take decades. Germany did not rise from ruin because of a single plan or miracle. It endured hunger, violence, displacement, disease, and silence before recovery began. The speed of later reconstruction often obscures the depth of collapse that came first. For those who lived through it, the war did not end in 1945. It lingered for decades.